In 1977, the 39th President of the United States, Jimmy Carter, had filed a UFO report just 4 years prior in 1973. 1 year before he was sworn into office, his famous quote was as follows: "One thing's for sure, I'll never make fun of people who say they've seen unidentified objects in the sky. If I become president, I'll make every piece of information this country has about UFO sightings available to the public and to the scientists." But that fateful day would never come. Just 5 months after Jimmy Carter was sworn in as the United States President, on June 14, 1977, he was called into the White House to attend the classified UFO briefing conducted by the CIA. According to former NASA researcher Ed Harris, who collaborates the story of this UFO briefing, the meeting started with a forewarning that the following information is very unsettling and will explain why Carter never kept his promise of revealing classified UFO information to the public. Meeting in the Oval Office, one-on-one with one single MJ-12 special operant, he disclosed to him that the CIA had been meeting with these extraterrestrial beings where they relayed the information that they were our progenitors and creators, and they admitted that they had created all of the religions on the planet, including Christianity, for the purposes to control the masses and to use and abuse human beings for their experimental testing. And President Carter, being a very religious Christian and clergyman, began to sink down in his chair and place his hands upon his face and sob deeply. At this moment, he had realized the devastation it would cause the public to learn about this farce that had been going on for our entire planetary history. He was also told that it would have a tremendous effect on our economy and would create social upheaval, and was warned not to divulge or disclose any of this information to anyone. Such implications would pose a threat to national security, as Kennedy even found out about this subject. So if religion isn't true, then what about God? What about Jesus? Lord knows, we know that evil's running rapid in the world, so what about Satan? Well, just because they say that religions were developed and used as programs to control the masses, that doesn't mean that God and Jesus and Satan isn't real. But what the masses have been taught were serving the purposes of the ones who developed those religious programs. And truth has been twisted to benefit those that were in power 450,000 years ago when they came here. As we have learned in the video Who is Thoth, these are the extraterrestrials that the CIA referred to that uncovers the source and stories of God, Jesus, and Satan. By watching that video, we know that Satan was on this planet long before Jesus arrived. And we know that there is evidence that there was a nuclear war on this planet during the time of ancient Mesopotamia, caused by these extraterrestrials. But before all of this happened, many ancient wars had taken place that had led up to that point. Most of us know by now the stories that we have been given about our beginnings have not always been told with the truth in mind. With great authors of today like Zecharia Sitchin, Paul Wallace, Gerald Clark, and many others, we know that our beginnings were not put down in Holy Writ, and from the ancient tablets of Samaria that told the tale that unfolded the mystery of our true Genesis. glorious beginning that blessed us with an abundant planet filled with joy and happiness. Then we were invaded by outsiders that took our beautiful earth and the peaceful beings that lived upon it and twisted everything to their will. After the devastation they left behind them, there were many of their own race that felt sorry for mankind and stayed behind on Earth to continue the fight against the evil that had imprisoned our planet. Most people do not know the history of Satan and what began his journey on the dark road of evilness. Returning to the ancient book of Enoch, the book that was removed from the biblical canon, and here are the reasons why. If you watch the Who is Thoth video, we know that the Hebrews called him Enoch. In the book of Enoch, he explains directly to us who Satan is. His agenda is to corrupt and twist everyone and everything. The evil within him dominates everything about his existence, and he swore to overthrow the entire world and the all-source with it. We hear the story of how he led the first rebellion on earth, leading the Watchers, which also are called the IGIGI and the Grigori, into a rebellion against his own people and against the people of Earth. We find out in the video in the race of the Anunnaki that they are descendants of the Draconian race. Like most faiths on planet Earth, the Draconians too had their own prophecy that they would rise up among themselves the most powerful evil of the world has ever known. And through this evil entity, they would finally battle the All-Source. Their chosen one was Marduk, as Ningshita, known by the Anunnaki and known by the Hebrews as Enoch, and many other important names. He explains here how Marduk rebelled in the ancient book of Enoch, along with other historical records. In the book of 2nd Enoch, and those men answered me, there are the Grigori, who turned aside from the Lord 200 myriads, together with their prince Satan-El, and similar to them are those who went down as prisoners in their train, who are in the second heaven, imprisoned in great darkness. 1st Enoch chapter 6. When the sons of men had multiplied in those days, beautiful and comely daughters were born to them. And the Watchers, the sons of heaven, saw them and desired them. And they said to one another, come, let us choose for ourselves wives from the daughters of men, and let us beget children for ourselves. And SHEMIHAZAH, their chief, said to them, I fear that you will not want to do this deed, and I alone shall be guilty of a great sin. And they all answered him and said, let us all swear an oath, and let us all bind one another with a curse, that none of us turn back from this counsel until we fulfill it and do this deed. Then they all swore together and bound one another with a curse. And they were, all of them, 200, who descended in the days of Jared onto the peak of Mount Hermon. And they called the Mount Hermon because they swore and bound one another with a curse on it. These and all the others with them took for themselves wives from among them, such as they chose. And they began to go into them and defile themselves through them, and to teach them sorcery and charms, and to reveal to them the cutting of roots and plants. And they conceived from them and bore to them great giants. And the giants beget the Nephilim, and to the Nephilim were born the Elul, and they were growing in accordance with their greatness. The book of Enoch and the Sumerian tablets that shared the same stories that we find in many of our scriptures. These beings had personalities and names and agendas that still ring out today and are influencing our planet. They set themselves up as gods, which developed sophisticated religious protocols that began the whole religious spell that needs to be broken. They were known throughout every country on the planet by several different names of gods that we have from historical records. So where does Jesus come in, and how are we going to be saved? Well, Enoch gives us the direct answer to this question. He states the ones that will be saved will be the righteous chosen. 1 Enoch 1. The words of the blessing with which Enoch blessed the righteous chosen, who will be present on the day of tribulation, to remove all the enemies, and the righteous will be saved. Who's removing the enemies? The righteous chosen. And through those actions, we will be saved. He states that the righteous chosen will be present on the day of tribulation. He's making it known here that this is a future distant event in a different generation. And he confirms this. That's who he's speaking of in a plural sense and not a singular individual. And the next passage, which reads, "Not for this generation do I expound, but concerning one that is distant I speak. And concerning the chosen I speak now. And concerning them I take up my discourse." Them is plural. It's not one person. Philippians 2:12-13. "Wherefore, my beloved, as ye have always obeyed, not as in my presence only, but now, much more, in my absence, work out your own salvation with fear and trembling." He's telling us, this is Jesus speaking. He is telling us here, we have to work together to work out how we're going to save ourselves. People need to wake up. Christianity has been teaching for millennia that Jesus died for sins to save us from sins. No one can save us from sins. We have to save ourselves. It's time to take responsibility and break the religion spell that these false gods, where each of them claiming to be the supreme God, creator of all, have put this trap upon humanity. This is the reason why scriptures like in Enoch have not been allowed in the present canon of the Bible. Well, if it's not allowed, who do you think's controlling the Christian faith and the other dominant religions on this planet? As you see in this picture of the Anunnaki dynasty, there are those that were considered the Council of 12. All of their names are in green here. And under each name are all the titles that they gave themselves per each country in which they were a god of. Of course, there's different dialects and languages across every country, and so every name could be different. These 12 that were on the council set up the standard for every religious pantheon from here on out. Examples here are from the Greek pantheons in Rome. They had their 12, even in Egypt, even in Scandinavian, the Nordic tradition. All of these religions reflected what the Anunnaki had brought to this planet because they wanted human beings to revere them as gods and worship them. If you have watched the video, Who is Thoth?, you also know that the Anunnaki began to procreate with the human beings that were on this planet, creating bloodlines that they called their own. And through these bloodlines, they had set up kingships to help control the masses because humankind had grown so large. In the book of Wars and Men by Zecharia Sitchin, it traces the most notable, which is Marduk's lineage, all the way to the royals in Britain, including the Rothschilds and the Rockefellers. After the nuclear war between the Anunnaki, Enlil had realized he had not defeated Marduk. His troops were captured by Marduk, and he fled and returned back to Nibiru. During the captivity of these Hebrews, Jews, they were twisted to the faith of Marduk and his priest, which, if you've ever read the Babylonian Talmud, it's probably one of the most evil, twisted religions on the planet that teaches incest, rape of children and women, abuses of all kinds, prostitution, violence, murder, and it goes on and on. Marduk also twisted many of the teachings of Jesus and has even claimed that he actually is Jesus. He had infiltrated into the Catholic Church, who cherry-picked everything throughout the Bible, which the Anunnaki are the originators of the Old Testament and part of the New Testament as well. If you watch the Who is Thoth video, you will understand this conflict between Satan and Jesus and how far back it really goes and their relationship to one another. One thing that I need to emphasize is when Yeshua was here on this planet, he made it clear that he was not a deity, that he did not come in his own name. But he was here to represent the all-source, the all-creator, and teach mankind how to escape out of this simulated matrix that we're stuck in on repeat, and what we need to do to save ourselves. We are not to be using the salvation plot as a scapegoat religion. We are to step up to the plate and become the children of light that is a part of the solution, and not sitting around waiting for someone to save us. Unlike the Bible, where Jesus reveals some of the way to escape this false reality, there are other writings left behind by him, just like the book of Enoch, that has not been given to humankind, so you won't find the answer and you'll stay stuck here. But there is several tablets that he has left behind that reveals exactly what needs to be done, and he provides the pathway that you must tread and the doorway you must pass through. But you must do the work. You are your own salvation. And if we do this together, our consciousness changes together, and the whole world will change all at once. That is the choice that mankind is presently facing. Those who have ears will hear the truth, and those that belong to him will know him when he speaks and will know the words that are true. They will know them when they hear them. The pathway is not easy, but is available for those who truly want to know.